Will Work for Patients, Episode 26. Step it up, Chiro friends.
Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for that slamming introduction, but no time for pleasantries today. I'm usually full of compliments, but I'm about to break precedent and blow your freaking minds today. Are you surprised? Are you waiting for me to say who I am and why I'm doing this podcast? Me, I'm Frank Sardella. And I could tell you I'm so happy to be with you here again today in our podcast show and tell you how this show is free for you to not only give you marketing help in your practice, but to keep you on purpose, blah, blah, blah. I've been saying that for 25 episodes, and it's time to step it up. Yes, we've been having fun here on Will Work for Patients. Yes, we've gotten a lot done. Yes, we've had some blockbuster guests. But I've decided recently in this past week that it's just not enough. And I'm tired. I am tired, people, of not making the progress that we need to be making. And today's episode is going to be something different, okay? So let me just warn you. Let me give you this little admonishment here at the beginning of this podcast. This is not for the weak or feeble-minded. This episode of this show is for the ones who really want to make it. And this excludes all practice victims. If you're a victim in your practice right now, if you think the economy has got you down, or you're in competition with other chiropractors, or any set of problems from patients to spouses is keeping you from your success, if you have any excuse why you're not doing better in your practice right now, shut this episode off right now. This one is not for you, okay? We're going to get intense, and we are going to get down to it in this episode. I have got some laundry to air out here, okay? I have got a beef, a bone to pick. Insert metaphor here, but I am both fired up and pissed off at the same time. And I want to give you something to remember, okay? Because we need to inject something into this thing. It's going nowhere. Am I talking about the podcast? No. Am I talking about your specific practice? Somewhat. I'm talking about the profession, guys. I'm talking about losing ground versus gaining ground. I'm talking about complaining about Obamacare when we should be getting people under care. I'm talking about a lot of stuff, and I'm fired up. And you know what? I made a lot of changes, and now you're going to make a lot of changes too. So if this is too intense for you, I'm warning you, shut off the podcast now. But if you really have the desire to expand your practice exponentially beyond what you've already targeted, then this podcast episode is for you. Example, I just called just about every one of my clients and asked them what their goals were for 2015 and demanded they double or treble them right off the bat. This is the kind of energy that we need to have. And I am here to inspire the crap out of you and make sure that it gets done. So that's what we're going to get down to in today's episode. Today's episode is entitled Put Up or Shut the Bleep Up. And that's how intense we're going to get in this episode. Now, again, in breaking precedent here, I am talking to you from a little bit different of a platform than I normally do. You can tell I've got a little more fire in my belly today than I normally do, and you better get used to it, because this is something that's going to be the future of this podcast, the future of my coaching, the future of everything. We really stepped it up. I added a whole new level of service to my coaching just in the last 2 weeks. I sat down and intensively woodshedded and said, what is it that's wrong with this place? Why am I not on fire myself every single day? And so I started looking at entrepreneurs. I started reading books. I started watching videos. I started looking around at the people who are really doing it, and I realized we're not really doing it, and I'm just as guilty as you are for not pushing you harder. And that's where I want to go today. This has to get intense. This has to be where it absorbs every moment of your life. And it doesn't take a break for anything. Not even to eat, not even for television, not even for sleep, man. This is like the big time. This is the thing that needs to be done. And you're going to, by the end of this podcast episode today, you are going to check your purpose and you're going to check your decisions about where you want to be. Because I guarantee you, if you're not expanding, you're not fully in. And you've got to be all in. And you know what? That should be the title of this episode. All in. Because that's where you need to be. Now, listen to the first 25 episodes. There's great episodes there and there's great advice, but you are not going to hear nearly this amount of intensity there. And I guarantee you listen to the next 25 episodes, and this is exactly what you're going to get from me. I am committed to you to make sure that you get nothing less than this. Now, I told you, I'm both motivated and pissed off at the same time. Why am I pissed off? Well, I'm tired of the victim view. I've been dealing with too many victims. I've been dealing with too many people that want to tell me how it can't be done versus why it can be done. I've been dealing with too many practice owners who have a spouse telling them what to do. If you're listening to this and you've spoken to me about such a thing before, don't flatter yourself. It's not about you specifically. Because if you've had this conversation with me before, I guarantee you there are dozens of others like you who have done the same thing to me. This is not pissed off from one scenario, one person. But I've had it with that. You guys have known the right things to do. You know what you're supposed to be doing, and somewhere you let somebody talk yourself out of it. And you've accepted it, and you've become a victim. And we're not going to be victims anymore. So this put up or shut the frig up here, so to speak, really is a call to action. And that call to action, that action is a decision. You're in or you're out. If you're out, drop off the podcast, drop out of practice. This is big time important right now, especially in this economy. Now, where am I going with this? There's a lot of directions we can go. I gave you the pissed off direction. I gave you the victim direction. I don't want to hear any more negatives about making it. I've got people that I'm dealing with that are losing patience with their marketing. Here's a prime example. You decide to do a marketing program. You spend a bunch of money on it. And you don't believe in it. And you say, of course I believe in it. Well, think about it. Listen to this scenario and tell me if this is believing in it. You spend a bunch of money and you go out and you do your first event, your first talk. And your first patient doesn't show up from that. And you go, it's not working. I'm going to pull the plug. Now, I know that sounds absurd and ridiculous to many of you, but that is what many of you are doing right now. And it takes so much more work. Every single one of this type wants the magic pill. Just like you complain about your patients. You want that magic pill. You're going to spend that $10,000 on a marketing campaign and miraculously you're going to have 300 visits from 50. Not going to happen, folks. It takes some real work and dedication, but mostly it takes belief. Because when you have belief in it, you're going to have fun with it. And that's what I'm talking about. Now let's look at the flip side of that coin. Why am I so motivated? I'm motivated because I've been studying people for the last couple of weeks who, no matter what opposition they're faced with, have persisted. Okay? Example, I'm reading a book right now. Look, I don't know where you stand on sports, and I know it can be kind of controversial because people are loyal to their cities and their teams. But you know what? I'm a Giants fan. I'm going to admit it. And Tom Coughlin, the head coach of the New York Giants, a few years ago after the second Super Bowl win, wrote a book, Earn the Right to Win. And I bought it, and I read the first chapter or so, and I never really picked it up. I picked it up again recently, and I have to tell you, some of the stories that are in this book, you don't have to be a Giants fan to actually understand the stories in this book. Some of these people, in the face of adversity that he mentions in here, players, coaches, who took seemingly doom circumstances and made something out of it, believed in it for an unbelievable, idiotic amount of time. I'm talking not weeks. I'm talking a couple years. People who have believed in themselves enough to say, I'm going to work at this no matter what the odds are, and I'm going to be back in the game, and have been. And there's a bazillion stories in this book. I'm reading another book called The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. I watched a video of this man online. You know, you should check him out. Look, I don't know much about the guy and his program, but I can tell you this. I watched a video of him, and that guy takes crap from nobody, man. And he talks about dominating. He talks about not competing but dominating, be ahead of the pack. So what I'm inspired about is the fact that I've decided not to accept victim viewpoints. And what I've even done in my coaching is I've put an application process in. And that application process says, only this type of person can work with me. Only a person who's going to be completely dedicated, who's going to eat, sleep, and breathe his practice to make it something really special, something far more expansive beyond the wildest imagination. That's the kind of commitment I'm talking about. Am I talking about permanent 30 years worth of commitment like that? Well, sure, but I'm talking about a temporary situation. Somebody who knows they're going to put the work in now and it's going to pay off and make them a fortune. What do I mean by a fortune? Do I mean money? Sure. But let's not just talk about money. How about having a family and free time to yourself and the ability to do things? And have a practice maybe eventually that's run by others who really produce and get tons of people in the community under care and who really make a name for themselves. That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of success and prosperity that we're talking about here, and that's what inspires me. So I only want to work with people from now on who have that mindset, or at least want to have that mindset. Even if you're not quite there yet, if you have the desire to be there, you're almost there. It's willingness that we're looking for. I don't even want people to listen to this podcast who aren't there. That's what I'm doing. I'm separating the men from the boys, so to speak, ladies. We want to separate out those who are in from those who are not, and then go for it. And I have an application process on our lowest of coaching packages, on our smallest of coaching packages right now, application process. And guess what? I stepped it up even more, and I have a new thing that I'm doing called the Platinum Partnership Coaching. It's intense coaching. You talk to me every day. And guess what? It's even a higher standard application. Do you realize I'm not even offering it to all of my clients right now? I'm only taking the select ones and sitting down with them. And they can rest assured when they get approached by me that they're quite special. There is an intense application process to even be part of that. Because I can't not get results in this area, you guys. This is a commitment that I have, that we're going to actually make this target. We're going to do this. We're going to make a society that's well and healthy, and we're going to not fight pharmaceuticals. We can't fight them, folks. We don't have the money to do that. We're not fighting pharma. We're going to create a new healthy world that doesn't need pharma, and pharma will die on its own. Those are the people. If you believe in that, those are the people I'm down with. Those are the people I want listening to this show. Those are the people I want as clients. Those are the people I want to work with and dedicate my time with every single day. And my Platinum Partnership clients, now the word partnership is taken to heart. I become their partner, not on paper, not financially, but I become their partner in creating a practice, in motivating, in inspiring a practice that's going to expand beyond the farthest dreams. That's instead of $200,000 or $100,000 or even $400,000 a year to $1.5 to $3.5 million a year for starters. How about that? That's the kind of thing that I want to get into. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Now, I didn't mean to get super, super intense and scare anybody away here, but I really am going to be this intense from now on because I do want to scare away people that don't have the capability of having this viewpoint. If you got into this and you said, yeah, I want to be a chiropractor and I want to just go work for somebody else and I just want them to give me all the patients and yeah, I can only tolerate maybe seeing 50 or 100 people a week, but nothing more than that. I don't want to be in a high volume practice, right? I just don't even understand that. It doesn't compute to me. And that's not to put you down, but that's to tell you, and I think I'm doing you a favor by doing this, by telling you to take a good look at your purpose, if that's where you're at. If marketing isn't fun to you, then you don't like what you do. If marketing isn't fun to you, then you don't like talking to people about this. You could say it's fear of rejection, you can say whatever it is. Those are excuses. I'm talking about real willingness here, and that's what it takes to get something done. Now, how do you do that? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. And I really want you to sit down and take notice of this. Because I want to get even more intense here. I want to step it up. First of all, what I want you to do right now if you're in practice for yourself, is I want you to calculate right now, you may have the figure off the top of your head, how much did your practice bring in last year? I want you to have it down to the last cent, how much you made last year in practice. If you're working for someone else, I want you to figure out what was your gross on your W-2 or your 1099 for you subcontractors. What did you make last year in practice? And is that number satisfying to you, first of all? And look at that number and say, is that number worth what I delivered last year? I don't mean the amount of hours you spent. I meant the intensity. I meant the sheer miracle and magic of what it is you do with a chiropractic adjustment or series of adjustments, treatment plan, or what have you. Now I want you to look back to last year and figure out how much more you should have made just on the delivery you did last year. I want you to take a look at that too. That's number 2. Number 3, I want you to take a look at how much more delivery you could have done and calculate the value of that. And then, on top of that, I want you to calculate the amount of patients and the amount of visits that didn't get done because of patients dropping out of care and not completing the treatment plan that you prescribed for them. And I want you to calculate a dollar value for that. I want you to take a look at all those figures, and I want you to add them all up. I want you to start with what you made last year as one figure, and then all those figures after it, I want you to add them up. And I want you to compare the two. And I want you to be shocked. And I want you to be appalled by it. Now, I apologize to you if you're listening to this podcast and you are completely satisfied with that and you're really on fire. I know there are some of you out there. Every few people I speak to, I find a gem there. I find somebody who is doing it, and that's wonderful. And if you're not doing it, it doesn't mean you're out right now. Remember, it's willingness, guys. It's your fire in your belly is going to determine whether you're going to do it or not. Whether you can or can't right now is irrelevant. It's just, are you willing? Do you want to? Do you have the desire to do it? So calculate those figures for last year. Now, if you're in the range of 50,000 all the way up to 250, no, make it 300,000. 50,000 to 300,000 last year, I want you to drastically up those figures. Now, I'm willing to bet if you calculated the way I just said, if you're in that range, then you probably calculated you could have collected up to $1 million last year. Perhaps not if you were an associate. But if you were in practice for yourself last year, we're talking about $1 million in practice. I want you guys in that category to start thinking with, how am I going to make $1.5 million this year? Realizing this isn't all about the money, but the money sure is a measure of how much you're doing, isn't it? So you need to, first thing, step it up in terms of your end game, your goal, where you want to be in terms of volume. Forget about how many visits a week. Set it with a dollar value and figure out how many visits equal that. But set that dollar value really super high because we want lots of people. Now look, let me point the second thing out to you on purpose. If you say, look, I can be very happy bringing in 200,000 as long as I brought home 100,000, 125 myself, blah, 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 minus expenses, I could be very happy. And I can do that on, let's say, 100 visits a week. 100 visits a week, folks, isn't doing it. Okay, even the smallest community. I live in a community of 8,000 people. 100 visits a week means that I'm seeing, on average, about 50 people a week. How long do you think it's going to take me to reach the 8,000? You got to think with that. So the number 2 thing I want you to calculate is, what is your share? And this is something that I've said before, but I'm going to say it to you with a lot more intensity right now. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to calculate the population of your community, your area, or more generalized area. If you're in a town that has a lot of surrounding towns that you should be or could be drawing from, then I want you to add up all the towns that are significant radius from your practice, and I want you to calculate 2 figures. Find out the exact population. How many thousand people live in that radius? And then the second number is, I want you to find out how many chiropractors are there. And when you do that, I want you to take those 2 numbers and divide one by the other. I want you to divide the population by the number of chiropractors, and I want you to consider that number. If there's 10 chiropractors and there's 100,000 people, That means your share is 10,000 people. And I want you to figure out how seeing 50 persons, 50 bodies a week is going to ever get you to that 10,000. And I want you to also assume that the other chiros in your area are not pulling their weight either. Let's just assume the worst. So you have to do at least 10,000 people. Are these people not subluxated? Are they not living on the medical model? What percentage of your community right now, you guys, do you think has a wellness mindset or leads a wellness lifestyle? Yeah, there's a buzz about it now. Yeah, it's in the media and stuff like that. But come on, how many times have you come home frustrated going, people just don't get it? Well, guess what that means? Who do you think is going to make them get it, folks? So that measure of your prosperity, that $1 million practice or $2 million practice or whatever it is a measure of your resolve to change that. And that's what we're going to do. That's what my commitment is. That's why I'm stepping it up on this show. That's why I'm going to get guests who really want to make that happen. That's why I'm going to make suggestions to you, like reading this book by Tom Coughlin or Grant Cardone, or listening to the podcast of John Lee Dumas, I think is how you say his name. He's got the #1 podcast right now in iTunes. It's called Entrepreneur on Fire. I don't listen to it a lot, but I catch an episode here and there. But the point is, the guy has an attitude, and he gets guests on who have done millions of dollars in what they're doing, who are committed, who love what they do. And he loves what he does. I'm telling you, you should be listening to people who are successful around you. And you shouldn't be listening to people who have never done what you do. I'm sure you love your spouse, but your spouse does not necessarily know more than you do. In fact, I guarantee that they don't. So let's really evaluate those things. Look at that practice income and where you are in the volume. Look at the population of your community and how many chiropractors are there. And I want to put an end to this chiropractors in competition thing. Enough of the worried about what the chiropractor up the street is doing. He's my competition. He's gobbling up all the patients. There is no way. If you do my calculation that I told you to do, population divided by number of chiropractors, you're dealing with numbers of people that would be impossible for any of you to do at your existing size right now. There are plenty of people to go around. And I'm not just saying that by mathematics. You're listening to a guy who's been in the trenches for 20 years. Who still to this day does it. I was just out at a talk this past week, doing a talk. I'm still in the trenches, folks. I have screened and spoken to thousands of people and refer them to chiropractors. And I can tell you, it's exactly the way, per my observation, exactly the way that I'm saying. There's no way that you could handle, with your existing volume, the amount of people that are out there. There are plenty of people to go around. It's your willingness and resolve to get out there and look and see them. The problem is that people are not scarce. The problem is you are scarce. It's not the people in your community. They are there. They're hanging out in all the places. You're being scarce, okay? Are you going home and watching TV at night instead of sitting down and planning out how you're going to reach more of those people in the community, figuring out what places in your community where those people hang out, figuring out how you're going to get into those places? If that's too hard for you, guess what? It's a simple thing. Listen, I have a lousy $75 webinar we just did. It's still available. It's called Shortcuts and Backdoors to get screenings and talks booked for free absolutely anywhere. And it is 90 minutes of just idea after idea after idea of places you can go, people you can talk to, people who will even do the work for you for free without you even having to do anything. Be the best $75 you ever spent on marketing. But my point isn't just to sell you a webinar. My point is to give you ideas. It's to give you things that are easy to do, to show you that it really is easy. You're making it difficult. The difficulty is in your own mind. And case in point, any practice you've ever seen that's huge is testament to that. Contrary to popular belief. Check yourself on this. Have you been one of these people? These are people that I don't want to deal with. The people who call them Mick practices. The McDonald's of chiropractic. Shame on you guys who are looking at the larger practices for that. I'll tell you who's against you guys is Big Pharma. I posted on social media a few weeks ago that I had the unique, fortuitous, serendipitous opportunity. I work at Starbucks a lot. I'm always on the road, so I'm always in Starbucks. I spend hours there. And I've done podcasts from there. I do coaching calls from there. I've done webinars from there. And just very, very fortuitously, serendipitously, or whatever you want to call it, one day a few weeks ago, a couple of pharma reps made the mistake of sitting at the table next to me, and boy, did I spy on them. I was just listening to every word. And folks, I was sick to my stomach at how they're playing these MDs. The MDs are not your enemies either. It's the pharma reps and the pharmaceutical companies. And you guys know that deep down, but you can't really look at it. Why? Because they're too big. It's so easy to just blame the MDs, but it's not even them. It's being made more and more difficult for them. They're getting more and more pressure to prescribe more and more drugs. And they're losing their purpose. They've lost their way, many of them. But guess what? Juliana, my MD referrals coach, who works with our clients on getting them to go out and meet these MDs, has told me, per her experience in the field of going out and lecturing to doctors, medical doctors, that the majority, we're talking 80% or more, of those MDs actually got into practice to help. And they need desperately to be able to do that because they're finding out that they're not helping as much as they thought they would be. Because the only alternatives that are being offered to them right in medical school is medicine. That's all they know. And so what you need to do is you really need to check yourself on this purpose. And you really need to take a look at who your enemies are and who your friends are. If I were you, I'd be teaming up. I'd find the chiropractors who are on fire like this and hang out with them and start your own group of chiropractors and start strategically attracting your area. And weed out the victims. Find the victims who are like angry at anybody who's growing, who are resentful when you get a patient. Weed out those guys. You want the guys that are resentful, not the guys who are going out there and doing it. Those guys should be commended and you should be supporting them. And you should all be supporting each other. So that's the perspective. So let's recap here a little bit. We're weeding out the victims right now. Okay? If you're a victim, you got to decide right now if you're in or out. So if you're a victim, you have to decide that right now. Okay, I'm a victim. I don't have control over this. The economy dictates it. People dictate it. I have nothing to do with it. Fine. Get off the podcast and maybe get out of practice. Reconsider your goals and see if there's something you want to do more than this. And if you do want to do this, then check your purpose on why you want to do it. Why did you get into chiropractic in the first place? Come on, guys. There's so much to it, I'm sure, years ago when you first got into it compared to now. Rediscover that for a moment. And then look at it and make that decision. But you really have to know. So if you're out, you're out. If you're in, you need to check your purpose why you're in. And then really make that commitment to be in all the way. That's really what you need to do. How do you do it? Well, I told you. I want you to calculate your income from last year. I want you to calculate how much service you delivered and compare that amount to the service you delivered compared to what you collected, how much it's worth, how much you collected, and how much you lost out on. How many people dropped out of care? I want you to do that comparison. Do the math on that. Figure it out. And really, really make some decisions. And then set a new goal. Put it in the millions, folks. If it's not above $1 million, actually $1.5 million, if it's not above $1.5 million, it's not enough. I don't care if you live in a community with 2,000 people. It's not enough. You need to step it up. And that's what I'm here to get you to do. That's what my commitment is. That's where my practice is going for coaching. We are going to make people make practices like that. That's my commitment from here forward. The stakes have changed. The bar is raised. And you need to raise that bar for yourself. The next thing on the recap is to calculate the population of your area, number of chiropractors there. Do the math. And then add some onto the figure you get for your share, your responsibility, because realize that all the docs in your area are not going to be totally on board with doing their share. So you may have to take it all on your back and realize that there are plenty of people to go around. Okay. And then realize who your real competition is. There are, you can do this as another mathematical equation. You can calculate the number of MDs in your area. Calculate that number. And then assume there's 5 to 7 pharmaceutical reps. Let's back up for a second. Assume actually that there are 5 different pharmaceutical companies minimum. Companies, just the companies. I'm not talking about the types of drugs. I'm talking about companies. I'm talking about GlaxoSmithKline, Bristol Myers Squibb, AstraZeneca, all these companies. Assume there's 5, and then look at they have a rep for each type of drug. Do you know just Bristol Myers Squibb will have 1 rep for cardiac, 1 rep for psych, 1 rep for this, 1 rep for that. Imagine how many reps are buying those doctors lunch or giving them gifts, giving them free samples to give out to their patients, saying, prescribe my drug, prescribe my drug, prescribe my drug. And that's being done. And then the TV commercials to back it up. This is what you're up against. You know this. That is your real competition, folks. If you're looking at the chiropractors in your area as your competition, you have your head in a place where the sun never shines. I'm just going to come right out and say that, because you're not even close. You're just ignoring the problem if that's where you're at. So realize who your real competition is, and then find the chiropractors who are willing like this, and form a group, man. Get together with them. Have breakfast once a week. Hey, man, look, we got 50,000 people in this community, and there's only 3 of us here who really have the right attitude about it. Guys, let's start having this strategic breakfast once a week to figure out how we're going to attack that, because I don't know how you guys are going to handle your 16,000 people, 17,000 people. But I'm sure as heck not sure how I'm going to do it. But at least have that willingness to want to do it. And then work with a freaking coach if you need help with marketing. Okay? Suck it up. Listen to some podcasts. Read some books. Get inspired. And the last thing is, don't piss me off. I don't mean that literally, okay? I don't mean it literally. I'm saying don't do the things that piss me off. Not for my sake. What pisses me off? When I hear, oh, no, I put the kibosh on this marketing program because my spouse said I shouldn't be spending any more money. What the frig is that? Don't do things that piss me off. What pisses me off is when you look at an expense and investment as the same thing. An investment is you put money in to get money out of something. Marketing is not an expense, it's an investment. And above all, the thing that pisses me off the most is when you don't believe in it, you don't have patience with it, and you pull the plug at the least little glitch. That's the sign of a person who's not on purpose, who doesn't believe in himself, who isn't confident, who just isn't going to get it done. All you have to do is believe in it and push, and you can make it. And I'm here to tell you, I'm only here to work with the people and talk to the people and lecture to the people who are going to take that viewpoint. And you can be one of them. Even if you think you're not right now and you're about to shut off the episode per my recommendation, think about it before you hit stop and before you unsubscribe to this podcast, which I welcome you to do if you're really truly not on board. But if there's any tiny little spark there underneath it all, you need to start getting pissed off yourself. I don't care if it's pissed off at your spouse or pissed off at a patient or your CA or your best friend or the pharmaceutical rep. Tell you what, when I listen to those 2 pharmaceutical reps talking about this one doctor and how like pliable he was, how easy manipulatable he was. Not in those exact terms, but that's essentially what they were plotting, and they were laughing and joking. I was pissed off, and I had posted on social media, and you can contact me at any time if you want to know exactly what they were talking about. I'd be more than happy to tell any of you personally about it. But you need something to cling on to. Watch a documentary that's going to get you fired up. That movie Doctor, do you remember we had Dr. Frank Margella on the show in one of the early episodes, talked about the movie Doctored. He had the producer of that film bring the actual canisters, film canisters, to his town. They rented out a movie theater, him and the Tennessee Chiropractic Association, and they filled a theater with 200 people to watch that film. That's fired up, guys. That's the kind of thing that you need to do. And that's what I'm here to tell you. I'm not tolerating any less anymore. If you want to listen to my podcast, if you want to read my posts, if you want to read my blog, if you want to coach with me, if you want to hang with me, you got to at least have that desire to be that, to want that, and to have that. And that's what I'm demanding and expecting from you. And guess what? I don't have to do the last word today. Who gets the last word? I do. But this is my last word, the entire podcast. Did you notice we skipped all the pleasantries, all the traditions, top 10 list and everything? No format. I just went for it today because that's how I'm going to be from now on. And that's how I expect you to be from now on. And you know what? It is freaking fun to shoot from the hip, you guys. I have so much fun. You got to just go out there tomorrow and practice. Today, if it's lunchtime, then go back for your afternoon session and freaking rock it out and shoot from the hip. Go out there and talk to everybody you know about chiropractic. Go out there and spread it, man. This is it. The years will go by and you will look back with regret at this. And by all means, get out now if you're not in and go do something that you are passionate about. A passionless life is death. Do you follow me? Are you feeling me, people? So that's it. So when I say sit down, shut up, and listen, I don't mean that with any degree of disdain. I mean it with all the love and affection possible, because I am really behind you guys all the way, to the point where I'm risking it all to talk to you this way. I thought about this before doing this podcast and said, are these guys ready for it? Oh, maybe I'm going to make some enemies, or maybe people are going to be offended or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? F that. Because this is it. This is my new attitude. I'm checking my purpose, and I'm committing, and I'm stepping it up, because I'm starting to become the victims that I'm enabling. Every time I let a person slide on something, that I let them blow off that coaching call and not call me back. Every time someone doesn't sign up when they know they should to do my program, and I didn't insist all the way, I'm failing too. Every time you guys fail, I fail. Even if you're not my client, I feel like if you fail, I fail. Because what business do I have not getting you on board, right? And that's my point to you today. We can talk about next episodes. All I can tell you is you can expect the next episodes of this podcast to be something you can't even imagine. Listen, I can barely imagine it at this point. I just know we're going to step it up. And when I say I will work for patients, I mean that to the nth power now. I will work for patients. So will you? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Okay, as usual, listen, subscribe, and download. But to that, I am going to add, please unsubscribe if you're not all in, because we're wasting our time here. And you know it as well as I do. And I don't want to waste your time. It's not that I don't like you. It's that I don't like you wasting your own time when you could be doing something else. And remember, this is a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world like we all want. So let's make every episode count. And I mean that to the nth power. Let's take that farther beyond any of our dreams. We're going to really do this. So, my friends, we've come to the end of a fired up episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, our announcer Michelle, and the rest of the Screening Experts crew, I thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon for yet another destiny-molding, success-pushing episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.